Hi, and thank you for joining me for the next episode of Where is Google Going and how to properly position your business. Now, in a moment, I'm going to be talking with the guru of Google semantic search, David Amerland, and he'll tell you where Google's headed. But first, I created this business series because I really wanted to give you a virtual master's degree in leveraging Google so your business can profit from it. And this insight gave me the tools to run digital marketing for nationally syndicated talk shows. I put a first-time a first-time author on the New York Times bestsellers list in just 2 weeks. I helped a first-time movie maker earn national distribution rights. And because cancer hit my home last year, my personal cancer awareness projects used video on Google to generate 1.1 million social followers in just the last 12 months. Now, I'm not a genius. I just know where Google's headed, and I want to share that information with you. And you don't really need to be studying this every day. You need to understand the big pictures and be able to leverage it so you can use Google to hit home runs for yourself and for your clients. So over the coming months, I'm going to share with you my personal research conversations that I'm going to have with rock stars just like David on Google's primary 8 service sectors. Those include search, content, social, YouTube, mobile, technology, health, and digital sales. Plus, in each of those interviews, I'm going to challenge myself and also my guests to tell you, if we can, how to profit from this information and how to properly position your business. And that's why David Amerland is with me. He's the author of Google Semantic Search, SEO techniques that can get your company more traffic, increase brand impact, and amplify your presence online. Hi, David.
Todd, hi. It's a pleasure to be here. I absolutely love the intro because I think you contextualized it fantastically well. Everything ties in beautifully together with what we're going to cover today, I hope.
Now, you get it. I mean, I'm sure when you sit down with a client or you're working on your own projects, you already know that where Google's headed. You can use that to your advantage, can't you?
Yeah, I suppose it always helps. I mean, we know the general direction because for the last 10 years, really, Google has been heading towards it incrementally, trying to get the technology it had at its fingertips to basically scale up to the point where it made sense. So it's been a long journey for the company, although we think it only happened very recently. So that general direction hasn't really changed. But what has changed is the real impact of what they had been saying for a long time now. And that's what we're seeing at this moment.
Super cool. It's exciting for me as a digital entrepreneur. Google uses semantic search to do a better job fulfilling its primary mission, which is to provide the most valuable search results on the top of page 1. And for those in the audience who may not already know, what are semantics, and why is Google utilizing semantic search to identify the intentions of people when they get onto search? Can you explain that for the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. And semantics in itself means meaning, and usually it's associated with words. Words have a meaning, and when you say something, that word actually means a number of things. It means something very specific, and that's what semantics usually have to do with. But in the broader sense, in the moment we start talking about semantic search, we actually talk about meaning beyond just words. We talk about the meaning in the relationship of objects, the relationship of things, and the relationships of people. So, for instance, if you see your boss talking in your company with somebody you absolutely hate, and you think that they weren't getting along, just the fact that they saw them together, you haven't actually been privy to that conversation, you look at their body language, you see that means something for you, and it informs your strategy in terms of how you work in a corporate environment. So this is a classic example of semantics at work. And Google essentially uses that worldwide in a global sense in terms of what the web is to basically infer meaning of those connections.
All right, so semantic search seeks to improve search accuracy then by understanding the searcher's intent and the contextual meaning of terms to generate more relevant results, or even as you said it, which is even better, complex search queries can be used to give even better answers because they can now be mined for greater contextual clues than ever before. Is that all accurate?
It is actually, yes. And let's actually simplify it a little bit.
Good.
Basically, what Google is trying to do, it's trying to see what is the worth of a particular website or web page in terms of the content it has. So it tries to understand the content better. Then it tries to understand the importance of that content in relation to every other piece of content which is similar or associated with it across the web. And then it connects that with the search query that you or I put on Google search. And then it looks at our search history, our search patterns, what we do normally, our profiles, who we associate with, and what kind of content we normally access, to try to understand the intent behind a query. So if, for instance, I put down, I don't know, I may put down, let's say, American pie on my Google search. Am I looking for a recipe for American pie? Am I looking for apple pie? Am I looking for a film? All those things really, in order to make some kind of sense, you need to understand who I am and then try to understand what I'm trying to do in order to give me back the reply. So yes, we're heading towards greater accuracy in terms of that.
All right, so as an online video marketer, I know that the attention span of people in our audience is roughly 3 to 5 minutes. So to tease the audience, we're going to give, I'm going to challenge David, and he knows about it. I'm going to challenge him to help me figure out how people can profit from this information or how they can position their business. And nobody can explain this better than David. So that's going to come up in a moment. Bear with us. We're laying out the context. Now, the biggest clues, David, that I saw out of Google I/O revolve around three primary areas: site speed, mobile optimization, and quality content. And it totally makes sense because Google's positioning itself, and it has for a long time, for an intersection really between mobile engagement tied to, okay, Google, spoken word commands. And you recently explained in an article that Google then becomes less of a tool a tool to use and more of a personal assistant. Talk to me about that, the intersection of OK Google search and which is a voice command, and semantic search, and how and why they belong together.
Okay, essentially search is a service in many ways. It's something which we use in order to make sense of the world of information. Without it, we'd just be lost because we'd have to go through millions and millions of pages trying to find pretty much a needle in a haystack in terms of what we're looking for. So in order for search to serve us, it needs to become not just responsive to our needs, which means that it needs to understand what we say when we say things. It needs to understand, especially when it's voice search, it needs to know our accent, the way we use words, and it becomes familiar and it gets trained on that. But also it needs to understand how we use search in terms of the future and try to predict in a way a little bit of our search patterns and search history. Ultimately, search is heading towards predictive search, where we'll have answers to questions a lot faster, even though we haven't quite thought them up, kind of thing. And we'll talk about this hopefully a little bit later on. But in terms of what you said now, everything gets pulled together through the information and the data points we actually generate. And it's important to remember that we're all data. You know, the information on the web is data. What we do right now is generating massive amounts of information, which is data. Our mobile devices generate data. And all those data points, when they actually link up, they create a picture which acquires value at a point of contextuality. You know, information is inert until we actually need it. And you know, you pose the question: how does anybody monetize this? What does that mean for Joe Average? You know, who it doesn't care about technology or search, doesn't care that search is becoming complex but invisible. He wants to know what's in it for me. And basically, there is really good news here, because essentially the digital world is becoming very much like the offline world. In the offline world, you know, I'm David and you're Todd, and I might really study you and try to be like you, but I'll be able to pull it off about 5 minutes to people who don't know you. The moment that, you know, I come across somebody who remotely knows what you do, they'll realize that, you know, I'm not you and I can never be you. And that exactly is what's happening on the web. This is where we're heading. So essentially, for any kind of business, what really matters now is your personality. You know, three basic things: who are you, what are you doing, and why are you doing it? And if you can break that down in your head and then basically have that information in a very granular, detailed form, then the trick is, or the challenge, how do you then process that so it actually becomes visible on the web? And the moment it does, you have acquired uniqueness, you have acquired unique value, and those two things begin to directly help you connect with an audience, which is not any kind of audience, it is your audience. They're the people who are best suited to become your customers, they're best suited to become perhaps your friends, they're best suited to become your evangelists who will help you promote your business online because they're enthusiastic about what you do. And offline, we've always done that instinctively. You open up a little kiosk somewhere to sell, I don't know, Coca-Cola. And you do it with smiles, and you get to know your customers, and you are very cheerful, and they begin to know you, and they come back, and they become your regulars, and they bring their friends, and it becomes a hangout for them, and that's how your business grows. So your little Coca-Cola stand begins to become a viable business because instinctively you operate to create your market and top hat yourself, so you become unique in the minds of those who come to buy Coca-Cola, of all things. Same thing has to happen online. And that's the big difference and a challenge in one thing, in one shot, really, that we're facing today. So how do you monetize it? Well, be you. It's as simple as that. And I say simple with inverted commas because I know it's difficult. And the challenge is as difficult for a large corporation with big budgets and manpower as it is for somebody working from home. But it's there, and I think the person working from home is basically better suited and to answer this faster.
All right, so David, what you just said reminds me of a different way that I explain it. I used to go to work with my grandparents, and my grandfather gave me the best piece of digital marketing advice, even though he was never on the internet. And his advice was, people do business with people they have relationships with, so you always have to be in the business of developing relationships. We do that in a digital sense with content, right? So we want to create thought leadership. My big takeaway for this portion of my conversation with David is you can profit and you can position your business by using semantic search and start creating content around what your target customers frequently asked questions are. We see the best results come, we're as video marketers, we see our best results come when we create video, frequently asked question video libraries for our clients that supply answers that their target customers demanding when they get onto Google. Remember, Google is a supply and demand platform. When somebody grabs their keyboard and starts typing it in, or they go to their watch or their phone and they say, okay, Google, what they're doing is they're demonstrating demand for information, and you want to supply that with very compelling content that turns you into a thought leader and generates your relationships. What are your thoughts on that, David?
I love what you said. I will perhaps quantify the word thought leader, because we tend to think of somebody who's a thought leader as the only viable proposition for creating value. And really, this is not the case. Google recently, Google has human raters who they use essentially to help train their algorithm and run tests on that. And the guidelines they have for those human raters recently got leaked in the wild. And basically the guidelines point to three things, which the acronym is EAT, E-A-T, which is expertise, authority, and trustworthiness. And these are the three things which any kind of website needs or web page needs in order to get ahead. And we need those things as people. And it doesn't mean that you need to be a thought leader as a content provider or a website or even a website owner, but you do need to create value. So essentially, the targeted audience that comes to your website needs to find exactly what they're looking for in a way that doesn't tax them, doesn't take a lot of their time, doesn't make them feel that they have to jump through hoops, and leaves them with an impression of who you are, so that they understand there is a person behind the website or a business with a character behind that website rather than just some kind of automaton. And that is the real challenge. And everything else you said is absolutely spot on, really. And that's I suppose, the gray zone, that you don't have to be a thought leader, provided you provide real value for your target audience, which then they automatically appreciate. And I think the Q&A videos you actually create very much fall into that zone.
So that article that you were just referencing about the Google guidelines and EAT, I read it this week. I will post it into the events page after this conversation. It's in my Evernote, but David, off the top of your head, do you remember where that article came from?
It was leaked. Well, it was leaked from presumably one of the human raters who was given that article, that document. The document itself is 160 pages long. On Google Plus, Anna Hoffman publicized it. I wrote a piece about it just a little bit earlier today. So I've also got a piece on my blog site with all the links to it. And it was Jennifer Slegg, I think, if I remember correctly, who actually has broken down some of the guidelines on her website. And again, all those links are on Google Plus, and they're referenced in my article as well. So if anybody wants to follow them, they're all there. But essentially, the takeaway on this is, and we must remember that human raters are not used for the basic ranking of websites, but they're used for tests. But if we look at the guidelines, then we begin to see the direction that Google is actually looking at. And what is interesting is that comparing the guidelines today to the guidelines of 2 years ago, we're moving away from traditional spammy content which had to be identified. Google is obviously hitting that okay. And we're looking towards that kind of authority, quality on the page, expertise, and a sense of trustworthiness in what the website does. And these are very much human qualities. They're very much semantic search qualities. They're the soft qualities that we have come to associate with semantic content.
All right, so a question from the audience. Kristen Drysdale says, oh, by the way, do you mind if I ask a couple questions from the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead. I mean,
that's kind of the fun of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, cool. All right, so this question came from Kristen Drysdale. She said, why do so many people push against the idea of being a data point? I mean, it's so incredibly helpful to look at evidence-based opportunities to grow every facet of your business. Why do you think people push back on that, especially when they're already giving that information to people face-to-face on a daily basis?
That's a beautiful question, Kristen, and I'm very glad you asked it. And essentially, it's a human response. I mean, we have for a very long time been very sort of human and woolly in our minds. And although we can be very predictable if we reanalyze what we do, we all like to think that we're unique, we are totally unpredictable, extremely wild, and absolutely unboxable in the way that we actually behave. And this is so far from the truth that it can be quite frightening at times. So the moment we stick the data point label on a person, there's an element of dehumanization in that, but everybody reacts to it unless they can contextually step back and analyze it. And the moment they do, of course, you're absolutely right. It gives us a better handle on how we behave, the impact that behavior has on the web, how we can become better in terms of the marketing we do, in terms of providing value to those who come to us for answers or products or services. But it is a conceptual leap. It's very much the break between the 20th century, which had some woolly concepts which we took on board and applied, and the very much data-driven, granular world of the 21st century. And not everybody has quite made that leap yet.
All right, so if you're just joining me, I'm Todd Hartley. I'm the CEO of Wirebuzz. I'm joined by David Amerland. He's the author of Google Semantic Search, and we're involved in a really important conversation that can help you position your business. Now, David, you recently wrote, inevitably we have gone from content is king, slogans like that, to the realization that content now needs to resonate with its audience if it has a chance to be called exceptional, and create the kind of content that will really make you stand out. And when I read this, the most important pieces here are your content needs to be exceptional and it needs to stand out. Why is exceptional content so important in a semantic Google?
Well, because in semantic search, essentially we're dealing with entities, and the idea of an entity is something that is unique in terms of its existence, whether it's a concept or a thing or a person like you and I. I can't be you any more than you can be me. You have unique skills in your head, you have had unique experiences which nobody else on the planet has had, and you bring that into play every time you do something, and this is what makes you you. So essentially, this is the challenge we have now on the web in terms of creating content. And when I say exceptional content, really what I mean is content that's real. It has to reflect you, your journey, your values, your beliefs, and why you're in business. And if you successfully solve that equation of how you deliver the kind of value, then what happens next is you get people to basically connect with you, not because you are a business selling a product or a service, but because you are you and you do it in a particular way. And that's when your content basically becomes the connecting point between you and your target customers, your target audience, the people you actually are looking to connect with.
Mhm. All right, so NBA free agency and how it fits into Google semantic search is part of my own unique, bizarre Todd world. But NBA free agency is in full swing right now, David, and it's easy to see how teams are optimizing their rosters, right? Because they want to boost their winning percentages. So as a video marketer, I do the same thing for clients. You know, when I create video with Google semantic search in mind, I optimize their ability to be found in search, right, and engagement and sales results. I use video as the primary tool because it gets significantly higher search results and engagement numbers and so on. Talk to me about optimizing content and how that fits in inside of a semantic Google.
Okay, you mentioned video, and video is a very powerful tool. And if we analyze why, there are several reasons why. First of all, there's the inevitable pull of the visual element. You actually get to see people, you get to see action, you get to hear it. Then there's the quick win, because we don't have to go through reams and reams of writing in order to distill something. Here it is in a 3-minute snippet, in a 5-minute snippet, in 15 minutes of action. It's a lot easier to absorb. But beyond that, video also has something else. It is very shareable. People get very excited about it, they share it, they connect, they comment on it, they bring their friends in, they tag them if they're in Google+. It becomes a lot of discussion. So basically you create a network of contacts around it, and a network of comments, and a network of shareability points. And all those things mean something about the value of the video, they mean something about the content of the video. And this is, it happens before we even start talking about creating transcripts and words to actually describe what's happening there. And this is just one piece of content. Now imagine if you actually do that across everything. You do it on your podcasts, you do it on your written posts, you do it on the posts which you share in social networks, you do it in your video points. So basically all that behavior begins to become a very strong signal of your identity, really. And it's an identity building exercise, because that's what you're trying to do in semantic search in order to actually stand out. So the optimization and the visibility aspect of it has to do with a kind of identity building.
Yeah, it's really, I used to be in 1999 a digital marketer, right? And I was dealing with text and audio because I was running 7 national talk shows. And then I started to see in our analytics, when analytics got more powerful, that I was getting the best results because video was getting significantly higher social engagements. The time on page had gone from like 20 seconds to 2 minutes and 70 seconds. And then I started noticing that their retention power was significantly higher. Like if somebody reads, they retain, I think the science says about 10%, but if they watch it in a video, because it's entertaining and there's auditory and visual messages coming through, that we're retaining about 68%. So it seemed like a really smart way to optimize our campaigns to really dominate in the area. So like our breast cancer campaign did 1,000 videos, and from experts all over the country, and we would go to conferences and create them and then add the transcripts with it so Google can read what's on that video. And before we knew it, we had a really powerful tool that was contextual, it was relationship centric, it was socially shareable. It's pretty phenomenal when you start to think about it, don't you think?
Absolutely. And I mean, Hangouts on Air is a case in point. And
Right.
they have become such a powerful driver in terms of creating new contacts, identity, and also people relate to it because they can basically, they can see you and me. 65% of communication is nonverbal. So rather than just reading text and trying to imagine what we sound like, they get to see it. They get to see our expressions, our gestures. They can see our hands. They can see how we relate, whether we're smiling or not, whether we're serious or not. This is part of the personality that goes into character building and identity building. And from a human point of view, that's how connections are made. And it's very much a relationship stroke attention economy we're in. And those two things basically drive everything.
Now, David, as we are, I want to keep these conversations tight. I want to make sure that you recognize that I know that your time is valuable. While we're together, have I missed anything that the audience needs to know about how to use semantic search to position their business or to allow them to better profit? Did I miss asking you something vital?
Well, I would say the question usually that comes up is, great, where do I start from? And the field now is so vast that you can say, okay, I can give you a whole lot of lists things to start with, or we can make it very simple and start from what are you good at? Some people are very good at communicating a Q&A where you can have a questions and answers page on your website, which is very thorough. Some are very good at doing perhaps a video like we do now. Others are very good at podcasts, even pictures of what's going on. And you can actually create something with very few words, but a lot of pictures, which is a process or a moment in your business. Identify your strengths and use them as your primary point of entry into semantic web. And within those strengths, make sure you basically begin to clarify the process of who you are. What are you doing as a business? Why are you doing it as a business? Why are you doing that particular thing and nothing else? What excites you? Get that across. And these are the points which actually lead to a bigger win.
All right, so that makes really, really clear sense to me. As you were talking, I started to think, man, we've got a really nice audience. I have an obligation, like David does, to make sure we can give you something valuable. So where to get started from a Todd Hartley perspective? I think you ought to start writing down a list of frequently asked questions that your customers asking you on a daily basis. These are what your target customers asking, people that are just getting into your funnel, right? So write down a list of questions, keep it on your desk. Anytime a customer asks that in person, you know somebody's going to get onto Google and exercise demand and they're going to look for it. So write that list. Also write, that's your FAQ list. Also write an SAQ, which are the should ask questions. When you've got a list, then start creating video or start creating blog articles off of that and support it with a video because you want to optimize it to get the best results. So that to me is the real place to start. Use your frequently asked question library to reel people in to your sphere of influence off of search and off of the #1 and #2 search engines, Google and YouTube, and start making relationships. Now, David, I noticed that Google is such a phenomenal business, and I know they've got rock stars that are out there that are talking about Google products like you do, and so when you get like over 100,000 followers on Google Plus, they give you a watch, and then if you get 200,000 followers, you ultimately get like I don't know what it is, like maybe you get a necklace, but it sounds like once you get over 300,000 followers, do they give you a Google Plus couch? Is that what I'm seeing back there?
No, this is my Google Plus cushion. That's a present for my partner. So yeah, it's quite fun. It's part of my trademark these days, and a bit of fun.
That's wonderful. Well, listen, I'm so thrilled to finally get an opportunity to talk with you. Over the next couple of months, I'm going to be using this as an opportunity to give people a virtual master's degree in using Google to help business. Because I think all you have to do is listen to people like David. They're going to explain, and then use it as like a workbook opportunity. You write down, almost like the artist's way, write down the wisdom from David and start thinking about how can I use this to advance my client projects, because not everybody can be the smartest person in the room or in our industry, but we can all be the most resourceful, and that's a choice. So David, thank you so much for joining us. For more information on David Amerland, go look at his book. He's the author of Google Semantic Search, Search Engine Optimization Techniques that get your company more traffic, increases brand impact, and amplifies your presence online. David, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Take care.
Looking forward to our next talk. Have a wonderful day, my friend.
Okay. Bye-bye.